If you are trying to write fiction, but it feels really difficult, like you have a great premise, but you don't know where you're going with it, or you have a few plot events, but you don't know how to fill in the rest. If you write something, but it feels flat and boring and you're not happy with it. If you've been struggling with your current story idea for more than 6 months, but you just can't figure out how to push through and finish your manuscript for publication, then this video is for you. Because the truth is, if you are committed to finishing your book and getting it out to the readers who, I promise, are waiting for it, the book industry is booming, then you don't need a better story idea, a new project. You don't need more templates or more discipline, or more intelligence or more creativity. You already have all of that you need. You just need a system that will tell you what to do each step of the way to take your unique story and build it into a full novel that is full of emotion, which will hook the reader, character transformation that will make your story unforgettable, and a simple step-by-step process that will help you to finish your manuscript in a way that you are happy with. So I'm going to walk you through my 6-month system for finishing any novel. This will work for any genre, any tropes, any micro tropes that you might be working with. It's based in universal storytelling principles, so you can apply it to anything. Any length of story, any age group you're aiming for, any genre, anything. I use the system with my students to show them how to flesh out their story ideas into fantastic novels. And I use this exact same system myself with every new story idea or series that I write. Let me know in the comments right now if you have already written a book or if you are still working on your first one. Now, let me just say that this is not some golden overnight success egg, okay? Writing is always work, and this will be too, but it will be fun, creative work that you will genuinely enjoy doing. It will let your imagination soar and make writing magnificently fun again. But neither is it for the faint of heart. This is only for those who are committed to getting their novel finished in the next 12 months. Now, I'm mostly going to be talking about the first 12 weeks of the program here, because the second 12 weeks of the 6 months is just you actually writing the words. So of course I'll touch on that, but there's not a whole lot to say about it. So in week 1, we learn central conflict and the overarching story theme. You may be thinking that you don't need help with what your central conflict is, but I find that a lot of authors do. The biggest thing, even if you already have a pretty good idea what it is just to state it. So I've talked a lot in the past videos about using your subconscious mind to bring ideas out, right? And you should absolutely do that. But if they stay in your subconscious mind, then they tend to be a little bit nebulous. It's like they're potential, but you haven't nailed them down yet. Just bringing something forward from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind and stating it or typing it on a piece of paper or in your word processor makes it concrete and clear. And that's what we're going for. As to the theme, that's another part of story that our industry teaches terribly. Just start writing and the theme will surface. No. That can be true of smaller mini themes that will surface as you're actually writing, but there's absolutely a way to know what the overarching theme for your story is. In fact, you may already know what it is, but you just don't recognize that that is the theme. And we want to make sure that we know the theme, just like we want to make sure that we know what we're writing toward, so that the entire novel is geared toward that theme and built around that theme. Otherwise, you have a very disconnected feeling story. So you need to know the theme before you start writing because it informs the character's endpoint. Remember the baking the cake example? If you don't know what the end product is, how can you head toward it? If you write without knowing theme, your story is automatically going to be less cohesive and therefore less emotional, which means readers won't like it as much. Week 2, we're going to craft our protagonist. We're going to do internal foundations and identity. The biggest thing that most people miss when they're crafting their protagonist is the character wound. This is something from the character's backstory that caused trauma for them and now informs the way in which they see the world. It informs the way they react to things around them in the story and the choices they make. Making sure you know what the character wound is non-negotiable if you want your characters to feel realistic and memorable. And inside the Emotional Storyteller's Intensive, I walk you through exactly how to plan this and incorporate it into your story. Of course, this is where we will also plan your characters' looks, figure out how to describe them. We plan We craft their character voice. I'll show you exactly how to make them sound unique so that not all of your characters sound the same. We'll do their personalities and much, much more. We're going to do all of this so that your protagonists feel very three-dimensional and they just leap right off that page and the reader latches onto them. The next week, week 3, you may have guessed, is going to be villains, the next most important thing in the story. We're basically going to be doing all of the same things with the villain that you did with the protagonist, because remember, the villains always believe themselves to be the heroes of their own story. They too will have a character wound and a backstory. The main difference between the protagonist and the villain is that your protagonist struggles against their limiting beliefs, but the villain leans into them as a way to justify their own villainy. We will also be going through the psychology of hero-villain entanglement. Villains symbolically represent the shadow side of your protagonist. And when you find specific ways to entangle the two, the conflict and the stakes become much more powerful for the reader. And I can show you how to do that. In week 4, we're going to go through the full internal arc. We'll take the foundations and identity from week 2 and build out a complete internal arc for your character. This is the complete step-by-step transformation that your character will go through from the beginning of the book to the end. And this really and truly is what will change your writing forever. Because of course, your character is going to be going through and experiencing the events of the plot, but they're also going to be transforming internally as they do. And remember that internal transformation is what's going to bring your reader the deepest catharsis. In week 5, we're moving on to world building. Most authors do world building wrong, sorry to say. Sure, cool worlds, technology, magic, locations, it's all fun. But what most authors don't realize is that the world building should affect the protagonist's internal arc. The world that the story takes place in, whether it's a fantasy world or 100% contemporary to our own, should either push the protagonist toward their ultimate truth or else trip them up and represent obstacles to them getting to that truth. If you're not doing this in your story, you're leaving a lot of emotion on the table. And if that's the case, your world building, while it might be fun, is not entirely effective. But this is something that is fairly easy to learn and incorporate. In week 6, we're moving on to character relationships. Let's face it, most stories are not about one single character. If they don't have anyone to interact with, that would be kind of boring. There are friends, there are family, there are romantic interests. And in this week, we are going to nail down the function of the relationships that our protagonist has in the story. I'll also show you how to build out that relationship so that it feels exactly as we want it to feel for the reader. Do we want it to feel very loving and loyal? Do we want it to feel like there's a lot of tension? Do we want it to feel like it's more of an antagonistic relationship? There are ways to make sure that the reader feels exactly what you want them to. And depending on whether it is a static or dynamic relationship, we'll also figure out what it changing over time should look like on the page. In week 7, we are finally going to get to some plotting. We're going to start with the story skeleton. We're going to use my proprietary 10 plot points to plot out the high-level skeleton of your story, all of the big events. These are the major beats that you need to make sure you're hitting to keep readers turning pages. And they too are based on human transformational psychology. In week 8, we'll talk about beginnings and endings. So we'll be basing this on the 10 plot points, kind of doing a deep dive into all of the 10 plot points over weeks 8 and 9. So of course, in week 8, we'll be looking at the beginning plot points, including the very first scene or chapter, where to start your story, if that's something that's confusing for you, and how we're going to get into it. Then we're going to go to endings. We're going to talk about the climactic scene. There's a climactic scene checklist, how to end your story, and even the final paragraph or sentence of your story, how to make it really resilient so that the reader ends wanting more from you. In week 9, we're going to dive into the turning point and the 2 escalations. Those are part of the 10 plot points as well. Basically, these constitute the saggy middle of your story. So if you're one of those people that can figure out how it begins and or how it ends, but you have a really hard time with the middle, this is going to be what helps you. Most authors don't even know what the turning point is. It's not generally taught, and it is such an important plot point. But it would really be hard for people to know that unless they understand transformational human psychology. That is the key that unlocks everything. So we're going to learn all about that in this week. The turning point is a pivot point for your character when they go from inaction to action, when they go from being a victim to being proactive about things. It's a huge deal in the psychology, and basically the entire second half of your story hinges on that turning point. So it's crazy that most people don't know what it is. We'll also talk about the escalations, which are part of the middle of the story too, and I will explain exactly what those are and what they should look like for your unique story. Week 10, we're going to go into genre, tropes, and obligatory scenes. This is where we do a little bit of market research to make sure that you are hitting things that readers are looking for. And I want you to take note of where I put this step. It's not at the beginning. In fact, it's very close to the end. See, I don't believe in 100% writing to market. If you don't have passion for your story, your reader won't either. And if you're writing to market or writing to trend, just hoping to write about something readers like, it's always going to flop if you don't have the passion for it, and if that story is not coming from your subconscious creativity. Now, you may be asking, well, what about some people who write to market and succeed wildly? Well, with them, it just so happens that they actually were very passionate about what they were writing. So yes, they were writing to market, but they also really felt lit up about their stories. That is really the key. It was the passion with which they wrote their story that made the book succeed, not the trend or the market they were writing to. So that's why I start by getting you to write your soul story, by journaling, using your subconscious mind to figure out your story first. But once you do that, I do believe that you can emphasize or bring out market tropes that are already inherent in your story. And that will definitely help your marketing later. So again, I don't believe in writing 100% to market. I believe in starting with your passion and your soul story as the foundation, but you can layer tropes and micro tropes that appeal to the market on top of that or weave them in. And by doing that, you're doing both. You've got your soul story and you're hitting the market the right way. In week 11, we're going to do our cause and effect scene outline. So let me ask you this. Do you want the end of your story to feel like fate? Like this is the only way it could ever have turned out? Or coming at it another way, do you want to avoid readers being able to say, well, yeah, but what if your character just did this? They could have just done that. That would have worked and they wouldn't have had to do all this other stuff. Obviously, we don't want our readers saying that. It waters down the ending and they are not going to have as much story satisfaction if that's the case. They're not going to be feeling the emotion of it because it doesn't feel like the characters were forced into a fateful or destiny-like path. We certainly don't want readers finding holes in our character motivations or plot consequences. And we want the ending to feel not only logical, but inevitable. And here's a little secret for you. If you can pull that off, it creates a ton more emotion for the reader. Now, how are you going to do this? You're going to do this by doing a cause and effect scene outline. Don't do the index card thing where you're moving events around trying to figure out the chronology of your story. Doing that is going to make your story feel disconnected, as though you just strung together a bunch of events and hoped the reader didn't notice that they aren't terribly related. The major thing you're missing there is using the emotion and the character's motivations to create the cause and effect. It's not so much about the events. It's about how the characters feel and how those emotions will inform their choices moving forward. So emotions drive character decisions. So it's like, what does the character feel after each scene? And what is that feeling going to cause them to do? Not just, okay, what's the most logical thing that's going to happen next? That's not taking into account the character's experience of it. But I walk you through all the details of that inside ESI. And in week 12, we're going to do the addictive scene formula. This is where we go over what needs to go into every scene and how to craft them so they're like crack to your readers. Notice this isn't me telling you what to put in the scene. You should already know what the basic events are because of your cause and effect scene outline, which we already did. But this shows you how to take what you have already created for the scene and make it into one that hooks the reader, draws them through it, creates a ton of emotion, and pushes them toward the next scene. So they just have to keep reading. They have to keep turning pages and find out what happens next. And that, my dear author, is how you intentionally and purposefully create what is known as a page turner. Now, there are some other bonuses in the course as well. I'm going to teach you how to do echoes. And by that, I mean foreshadowing symbolism, repetition, how to set up and pay off, that sort of thing. And there is a training on great dialogue. As a bonus, I also give you a training on how to write an angsty blurb that will hook the reader when they haven't read your book yet and make them want to buy it. So this is the way the program drips out over the first half, right, of those 6 months. During that time, you are also going to get 2 live calls with me where you will be able to ask any questions you have, and I can even go over your story for, whatever it is you're struggling with that week. So if you're struggling with the world building, say, on the world building module, then I can go through your unique story and we will figure that out for you. I can lay it out for you, okay? So you have the opportunity to have my eyes on everything that you do in your story, if you so choose. I stay on those calls as long as needed to make sure every single person gets all of the help they need. Okay, so this is exactly what we do inside the Emotional Storytellers Intensive. I'm going to take you through step by step, show you exactly how to write, how to flesh out, how to craft your story in a way that will hook readers, that will be highly emotional, right? Of course, we're going to help you finish your story. Once those first 12 weeks are done, the next 12 weeks, you will still get the Q&A calls, but we have what we call group writing sessions where everybody just gets on Zoom at the same time, turns off our microphones, and writes together. Those are accountability calls so that you can get the writing done. But the second half of the program is just you getting your words written. And the great thing is, because you've never had this detailed of an outline that has not just the plot, but all of the emotion in it, it's actually very easy to sit down and get your words written at this point because you're not guessing what's going into the scenes anymore. You have it all. And because of the emotion, because it's coming from your subconscious mind, you can't wait to write those scenes. And it's so fun. And you absolutely can and will get your book written in that 3 months, the second half of the program, if you put the work in. If you show up to write the words, you will get it done. I guarantee it. Okay, so the Emotional Storytellers Intensive is going to lead you to create the best, most emotional version of your story that readers will just not be able to get enough of. And you, as the author, will get the insight of another author who's been doing this for more than 20 years. So if you want to change what you're doing, if you want to stop feeling frustrated, getting brain cramp, if you want to stop taking years to write your book, never knowing what happens next, stalling out mid-manuscript because you don't know where to go, and instead learn to write emotional, transformational fiction in 6 months or less, then I invite you to join us inside the Emotional Storytellers Intensive. As you can see from this video, we cover every single aspect that could possibly be in your story in there. So if you want me to hold your hand for the next 6 months and walk you through exactly how to turn the genius story that you already have into a fully fleshed out novel that hooks readers and makes them gush about it in the reviews, and then also give you accountability sessions to get your words written and build that rock solid writing habit, then come join us. We have so much fun on our calls. 6 months is going to pass either way. Wouldn't it be great if after that 6 months, you had a fully written novel to sell? One that you were excited about and passionate about and confident about? Well, now you can, but it's up to you to take the action.